1. Truth or dare? Chase asked Stacia. That smile was new, and Stacia didn't like it. She also thought this was a weird game to be playing after 3 years together. She felt like he knew everything about her. She never tried to hide anything from him, but at least he was trying to do something fun together, so she would play along. You better be careful. I've got some crazy questions, and even crazier dares. Again, she thought he had a wicked smile on his face, and she didn't like it. Maybe she was just being paranoid. Truth, she answered, smiling. Chase twisted his face in a mask of disappointment. What? Do you want me to pick dare? It really doesn't matter to me, Chase answered, but he still looked disappointed. Chase pretended to think. Are you scared of me? Actually, with that smile, Stacia was a little scared. Stacia thought that was a very weird question. She had known this guy since she was 15 years old. They had been together for the last 3 and lived together for the last year and a half. Of course I'm not scared of you, Stacia answered. She guessed he asked a dumb question because he wanted her to choose dare. Should I be? Stacia was thinking that maybe she should be, but that thought was short-lived. Okay, it's my turn. Truth or dare? Chase ignored both questions. Pick dare this time, he invited eagerly. I have a really good one. Okay, dare, I guess. Stacia hadn't hit the point of nervousness yet, but it was fast approaching. He was acting so weird. His weird smile widened. I dare you to let me tie you up in the basement and leave you alone for 10 minutes. Now she was nervous. Stacia really didn't want to do that. The unfinished basement was very scary. There were even rumors that 3 kids summoned 2 demons with a Ouija board. Then there was Miranda, the lady that lost her mind and ended up in Asylum 77. Her husband was arrested the same night and ended up in the asylum himself. Reluctantly, Stacia agreed. That's when things went horribly wrong for Stacia. He led her through the kitchen, down the stairs, then into the cement-walled family room. He sat her in a kitchen chair, then cuffed her to it. I'll be back in 10 minutes, Chase said, then brushed an almost loving hand through her hair. For some reason, Stacia flinched away. Stacia sat alone in the dark, but somehow she didn't feel like she was alone. She felt eyes watching from the dark hallway. She breathed a little harder. Then whatever it was stood next to her. There was 2 of them, one on each side. The one on the left sniffed her hair while the one on the right brushed an icy hand across her cheek. Stacia flinched away into a freezing nose that pushed on her neck. Stacia was terrified. She couldn't believe the stories were real. The apparition on the left softly bit Stacia's bicep, like a dog trying a new type of food. Stacia cried out, and a hand covered her mouth. It smelled awful. The demon on the right growled in her ear, or maybe it was a purr of enjoyment like a cat. Stacia sat statue still. The 2 moved around her slowly until she was surrounded by a weak tornado. It smelled even worse now in the swirling air. Stacia was more than relieved when she heard Chase take a step on the top of the stairs. The smell and the whirlwind was gone in an instant. Stacia began to cry softly. Hurry and get down here, Chase. She was mad and terrified. You need to uncuff me now. Chase ran down the stairs, holding an oil lamp that looked like it was straight out of a Wild West saloon. He moved a chair that Stacia hadn't seen directly in front of her. I can't believe you fell for this. Chase again had that smile on his face. I have to admit that you were one of the smart ones. I didn't think I would break you. Stacia wondered what he was talking about. Now I'm going to kill you in an untraceable way. Chase set the lamp down, then pulled a blunt and a lighter out of his shirt pocket. He lit it and let the first few puffs escape his lips. Stacia was terrified when she realized what was happening. Chase, what are you doing? Stacia's eyes were the size of dinner plates and full of tears. What the fuck are you doing? He exhaled a large cloud of weed smoke into Stacia's face. I can see you trying to hold your breath. How long do you think you can keep that up? A minute? Maybe a minute and a half? I have a full blunt to smoke. He took another deep hit. It was too big, making him cough and spit some drops of spit directly in Stacia's face. Stacia exhaled, then inhaled a quick breath. There was no oxygen. It was all weed smoke, which Stacia was deathly allergic to. Stacia was furious for letting herself trust this piece of shit. She felt the hives forming and already starting to itch on her face. She took another short breath, but Chase was right. How long could she really do this? He blew another hit in her face, then another. The air surrounding her head was thick with smoke. She felt her throat closing and panicked. She took a deep breath, then coughed hard. Just before she passed out, Chase put the blunt roach on the floor next to her and said, "I'll call you an ambulance, but we both know it won't be here in time." 2. Caitlin answered the phone almost immediately when she saw it was Stacia calling. "Hey Stacia, what's up?" It wasn't Stacia. It was her boyfriend Chase. He told Caitlin that when he came home from work, he found Stacia on the floor with a mostly smoked blunt next to her. He told her that she was still breathing when the ambulance arrived, but they were not giving Stacia much of a chance. He found a note on her laptop explaining how lonely she was, and she felt like everything was meaningless. That hurt Caitlin a little. Stacia was her best friend. Caitlin hoped that their friendship wasn't meaningless. His voice sounded like he had been crying for a long time. None of this made any sense to Caitlin. She went to lunch with Stacia just yesterday, and she seemed to be her normal self. Caitlin felt like she knew Stacia well enough that she would be able to tell if her friend was this upset. Stacia never gave off a suicidal vibe. Unfortunately, most people were not comfortable asking for help. It was truly sad. "Will you meet me at the hospital?" Chase asked, and Caitlin didn't even think about saying no. After 20 minutes that felt like a lifetime to Caitlin, she arrived at the emergency room. She parked her car and sprinted into the building. The automatic doors opened too slow. Caitlin almost went nose first into the glass. Chase was sitting in the waiting room watching TV with red eyes and tear-soaked cheeks. Chase hugged her, which was odd. They had never hugged before, but she guessed it was the situation. However, he did seem to put some extra flirt into the gesture. "How is she?" Caitlin asked. She too had been crying her eyes out since the phone call. "They let me go back there for a minute." She could hear the lump in his throat. "I lied and told them that I was her husband. I bet if you tell them you're her sister, they'll let you go back too." Chase paused. He seemed to be fighting back a sob. "They said it was to say goodbye." Chase rested his head on her shoulder, which she also found a bit strange. But again, she guessed it was just because of the situation. Caitlin did tell them that she was her sister, and they did let her go back. Caitlin broke down when she saw Stacia hooked up to all the flashing and beeping machines. 3. Stacia opened her eyes and tried to smile when she saw her best friend Caitlin through teary vision. She could tell that Caitlin had been crying a lot. Stacia's eyes closed slowly like automatic blinds. She snapped them back open, and Caitlin was next to her bed and they were now holding hands. Stacia gave Caitlin's hand a squeeze. Stacia coughed and closed her eyes again. Caitlin brushed a hand through Stacia's hair, and this time Stacia was able to smile. Stacia lacked the strength to open her eyes, but she was able to speak softly. Stacia told her friend everything that happened, but when her eyes opened again, Chase was standing at the foot of the bed. "Would you just die already?" Chase said. She could see the sea of hate in his eyes. Stacia began to shake in fear. "Are you okay, dear?" the nurse asked. Stacia opened her eyes and she was still shaking. She didn't see Chase anywhere. She calmed, but just a little. The nurse turned on something that dripped into Stacia's IV. Her eyes closed again. This time when she opened her eyes, Chase was standing menacingly in the doorway. Her room was dark and the hallway was light, making Chase an almost shadow figure. Stacia tried to sit up, but she was far too weak. She tried to push the call button that alerted the nurse she was in need of help. Her fingers wouldn't move. Her eyes filled with tears that were half fear and half fury. Stacia wanted to bury her hunting knife into his left eye first, then his right. He walked towards her. She fought to keep her eyes open, but lost the battle after only a minute. The machines beeped and chirped behind her head. She tried to focus on the noise so she would be able to hold on to consciousness. "Why won't you just die?" He breathed hot breath into her ear. She opened her eyes, only to look directly into his evil ones. "If you won't die, I'll just have to kill you again." Stacia's eyes closed. 4. 4 days passed since Caitlin saw Stacia in the hospital. She did hear from a friend of a friend that Stacia was being released today. Caitlin didn't believe her friend or her friend's friend. Caitlin made no effort to see Stacia again. Maybe because her and Chase found comfort in each other. The two had become close. They went on their not first date 2 days ago. The two bonded over the trauma of what Stacia put them through. Both would grieve Stacia for a long time, but there was no reason the two couldn't grieve together. Anyway, Caitlin was still mad at Stacia. How could she try to leave Caitlin alone in this crazy world? It was on their first not date that Caitlin told Chase that Stacia had passed away. She even produced an obituary. Caitlin spent the next 4 days getting to know Chase and even told him that Caitlin couldn't believe Stacia could do this to such a great guy. Chase said the same, but towards Caitlin and not himself. He found Caitlin to be a sweet girl. Every not date the two went on, they both felt like they were being watched. Tonight was no different. Like a ghost was watching from the corner of a dark basement. Caitlin couldn't believe how much fun this night had been. How did he know that she loved musicals? She couldn't remember talking about it. And now they sat in the corner of a dark bar, holding each other's hands and enjoying each other's company. "I'm so glad you decided to come out," Chase said, and he did sound genuine. "I know you and Stacia were close, and after everything, I didn't know if you would. Honestly, it does feel weird." Caitlin's eyes teared up, but she fought them back. "But she did what she did with no care for me, so I'm gonna live my life without a care what she would want." "That's very true," Chase said with a wicked smile that Caitlin didn't like, but also did like at the same time. He looked like a smoking hot villain. "I just know we both loved her, so this might have been weird, but I'm glad we did it. And you're right, she decided to leave, so fuck it." The two clinked glasses. 5. Stacia couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her best friend on a date with the man that tried to murder her. It had only been about a week since that piece of shit tried to kill her. The first day out of the hospital, she got in contact with her brother who worked at the Examiner. He printed up a few of that day's paper with Stacia's fake obituary that she would strategically plant around her circle of friends. Only a few people would get to know she was still around. She wanted Chase to totally believe that she was gone. He had some payback coming, and she wanted him to be surprised when it hit. Chase was in for some trouble he was not ready for. Stacia was going to get that son of a bitch, and she knew his mom, so she could say that. Stacia watched from across the street for the couple to come out of the theater. It was a very long and angry wait for the young woman. She wanted to dice Chase up with a sharp knife, but she had to be smart about it. Now she watched the two drinking wine and laughing like a couple of asses. Fresh anger coursed through her veins. When he leaned in to kiss Caitlin, Stacia almost blew her cover. Lucky for him, Caitlin stopped it. She expected that from her longtime best friend. She watched the two walk out of the bar hand in hand at 1 o'clock in the morning. Stacia watched from the shadows, but there was nothing to see. Caitlin got in one car, and Chase got in another. Stacia followed Caitlin and was relieved when her friend truly did go home alone. 6. 2 out of the next 3 dates, Caitlin was nearly positive that she saw Stacia lurking around. On those occasions, Caitlin made sure to grab his hand or maybe pull him in for a hug. The good news was that Chase didn't see her. How would he have reacted if he had? She guessed it would have rightfully freaked him the hell out. It may even cause things to end between the two, and Caitlin was not ready for that to happen. Today was April Fool's Day, and Caitlin was not quite done with him yet. She had big plans for Chase today. She always had fun on April Fool's Day. Having the almost holiday fall on a Saturday was perfect. The two planned to spend the whole day together, ending with dinner at the home he shared with Stacia not that long ago. He was very excited for tonight. Caitlin had not so much kissed him. Chase was sure that he knew what the surprise was. Chase was basically foaming at the mouth. He couldn't wait. He tried plenty of times, but Caitlin shot him down on every occasion. She spent the morning getting ready. She wanted to look her very best for tonight. Today was going to be a very important day for her, probably life-changing. She got a text as she was finishing her modest makeup. It was Chase, of course. "Are you about ready? I'm already at the diner waiting for you. Today is going to be amazing." "Yes, I'm about to walk out the door," she responded. "I'll be there by noon. The diner is only a couple minutes from my house." 7. Stacia was already at the diner when Chase pulled into the parking lot. He got out of his car and took a puff off his vape, then blew out an oppressive cloud of smoke. He pulled out his phone and began messing with it. It looked like he was typing. He stopped, and after only a minute, his phone dinged. He read it and smiled. She guessed that he texted Caitlin, then she texted back. Stacia was so mad. She wanted to make that asshole suffer more than anyone in history. She couldn't believe what he did to her, then had the balls to ask out Caitlin also. How could he go out with her best friend? The Chase she had known most of her life would have never done any of this. Sadly, that was not the real Chase. The real Chase was a villain, like a fictional character created in the mind of a madman. It looked like Chase could feel her eyes on him. He put his phone in his pocket, then scanned the area slowly and carefully. Or maybe he had a similar plan for Caitlin. Maybe he had plans to kill her as well. Maybe this was a pre-murder lunch. His eyes fixed on the bush that Stacia was using for camouflage. Stacia knew what she was doing, so she knew there was no way he could see her. But maybe he did sense her. After a few minutes, Caitlin pulled into the parking lot, then parked next to Chase, who rushed to open her door for her. She got out of the car, and Chase tried to kiss her. Caitlin pulled away. Stacia heard her tell Chase that there would be plenty of time for that later. He looked frustrated, but respected Caitlin's wishes. They went inside, and thankfully the hostess sat him next to the window. Stacia watched and was angry as she had ever been in her life. 8. Caitlin looked out the window and thought she saw movement in the large bush on the other side of the parking lot. The sane part of her mind thought it was probably a cat or maybe a squirrel. The paranoid part of her brain thought it could see the shape of a person. Again, she thought of Stacia. "I still can't believe you agreed to date me." Chase seemed genuinely excited. "You know, because of Stacia? Maybe he really did like her. She would find out how much after mini-golf tonight. Well, she obviously didn't care to be here with me, so I don't care to respect her memory." Caitlin sounded pretty chippy. She didn't care if she hurt me, and hell, she's gone anyway. Of course it was hard at first. Stacia was my best friend for a long time, but that meant nothing to her. Caitlin smiled a cold smile that Chase seemed to like. He bit his bottom lip a little bit. Chase agreed. They left the restaurant. Caitlin left her car in the parking lot of the diner. Caitlin watched a car that seemed familiar pull out of the parking lot only seconds behind them. Chase jumped on the freeway, and the two sang together loud and out of tune. They laughed together. Things were going great. Caitlin even threw in some of her signature dance moves. She was having a great time with him. It was a bit surprising for her. The first few dates were fun, but so far this one was on a whole new level. Maybe she was just extra excited for tonight. He pulled into the underground parking lot, found a spot, then opened Caitlin's door. They barely noticed the car that drove by, then parked 3 stalls away next to the thick cement beam. 9. Stacia snuck into the Dome Theater after all the lights had gone black. The action between the couple was non-existent during the laser show. All three were fans of obscure music from the early 2000s. The show was a little of everything: rap, rock, grunge, country, pop, and even a couple of techno songs. She ducked as low in her chair as she possibly could. Stacia was short, so she was able to sink pretty low. She even let herself enjoy the show. She waited a full 2 minutes after the couple left before exiting the theater. Stacia followed them all the way to Roy for their miniature golf game. The place was designed for families. There was a full 18-hole golf course for Dad and Mom. They also had a mini golf course for the kids. Stacia hid behind trees and watched the entire game. There were a few separate instances of hand-holding and a couple of hugs, but still no kissing. The game ended around 7, and the course was only minutes away from Chase's house. Stacia beat them to the house and watched them pull into the driveway while hiding under a pine tree across the street. A fresh wave of murdery feeling washed over Stacia. She couldn't believe he brought Caitlin to the house they shared. 10. Chase cooked. Caitlin very much enjoyed the dinner he made. Now it was time to have some drinks and prepare for the surprise. Chase made the first round, but Caitlin wanted to make something special for their next drink, kind of an April Fool's prank. She poured the powder into the drink, then stirred until it was invisible. She hoped it was tasteless also. He drank it so quickly that she didn't even think he tasted the alcohol. Caitlin talked him out of his clothes with very little effort. She sat him on the couch and watched him black out before she could even pretend to try to kiss him. Chase blinked his eyes open. Caitlin could see in his eyes that his brain was still foggy. His eyes locked with Caitlin's. April Fool's, motherfucker. Chase looked confused at first, but then looked terrified when he saw Stacia standing next to Caitlin. Did you really think I was dumb enough to be with you after what you did to her? He looked down to see his hands and feet handcuffed to a chair, probably the same chair he had cuffed Stacia to. He was in the guest bathroom looking towards the mirror. Both Caitlin and Stacia could see that Chase was completely terrified of the two ladies. They both relished in it. "What are you going to do to me?" Chase asked, and he was almost crying. Stacia was pissed that he would try to play the victim after the hell he put her through. There would be no sympathy from her. Caitlin laughed when she thought about how terrifying the two young women must look with the candle flickering behind them. Caitlin slapped him across the face. "I can't believe you thought I would betray her for you, you fucking loser." Stacia flicked her thumbnail across the head of a match, which brought it to life with a bright flash. When it faded out to a normal burn, Stacia smiled, then flicked it into the waterless toilet. The toilet bowl flashed bright like it was full of gunpowder, then flared out. The bones and the leaves smoldered in the bowl, creating a wonderful smell that Caitlin was not expecting. "Bawa Bazone, come and get him. Bawa Bazone, come and get him. Bawa Bazone, come and get him," the two women chanted. The room dropped in temperature enough that the women could now see his breath. "We have to get out of here," Stacia said while ignoring Chase's pleas. There was movement in the basement. "They will come fast." Stacia and Caitlin quickly left the bathroom into the hallway, then into the living room and out the door. Both girls stopped in the middle of the road, then turned back to the house. At midnight in Clinton, traffic would be light, so they wouldn't worry about cars. 11. Chase sat cuffed to a chair, staring into the mirror, and watched the flame on the candle dance. It got cold after the women chanted, but now it was even colder in the bathroom. He knew the stories about the house. Most of them were pretty dark. Chase heard more movement in the basement. Tears filled his eyes when he heard the footsteps start ascending the stairs. He began to shake when he heard the footsteps squeaking on the kitchen floor. Then there was silence. A dark shadow formed in the mirror behind Chase. Chase screamed. 12. His screams of pain echoed off the neighborhood houses for no longer than 30 seconds. The scream would echo through every good dream Stacia would ever have for the rest of her life.
It shouldn't take much longer to get there.
Stacia was so excited to be here. It was not just the excitement of the treasure hunt. Stacia loved being in nature. She had never been to Box Death Hollow, so she was a bit extra excited. Caitlin was excited as well, but her excitement was sprinkled with a pinch of fear. The two had become very close since that night that Stacia summoned the demons. Beings as powerful as demons had been very effective bodyguards.
I'm pretty sure we're about to find this treasure. All the clues point here.
It would be nice to find the 25 grand, but this adventure with Stacia was the real treasure for Caitlin. Stacia and Caitlin were nearly inseparable since the incident with Chase. The whole ordeal was a mess, but that April Fool's, Caitlin found a new respect for Stacia, and Stacia for her. They worked in the same office, hung out with each other after work. Caitlin had even moved into the Ouija house that Stacia once shared with Chase. The two women had found comfort with the beings that handed out Stacia's justice. Box Death Hollow was Caitlin's least favorite name for any place she had ever been, which included some pretty freaky places in Europe. However, these two women felt invincible by each other's side, and the demons watching their back. For some reason, their invisible protectors were absent since the two entered the Echo Forest. That was okay, though. Box Death Hollow was just a name. It was probably like a place where an outlaw hid his loot, and the name was to scare people away. He added the scary backstory to really freak people out. There was obviously nothing in these woods called copycats.
That would be crazy,
Caitlin said, then did one of her signature Caitlin shimmies. Then both ladies laughed.
We could definitely use the money.
Stacia agreed, then asked,
Where do you think Baba and Bazone went?
Caitlin didn't know, and was a bit worried.
I'd feel so much better if they were here.
Caitlin agreed also. They were absent since the moment they entered the border of these woods. They also felt the eyes on them. It had to be an animal, hopefully not a big one. Caitlin thought she heard a low growl just off the right of the trail. Both Stacia and Caitlin agreed that it sounded like something in the canine family, just a little deeper and more powerful. It was most likely a wolf, but that growl sounded like a massive wolf.
What do you think that was?
Caitlin asked, with a little more fear in her voice.
Do you think you could get them here?
She was obviously talking about Bawa and Bazone.
Should we go back?
Stacia was staring into the dark woods that were getting darker by the minute. Neither could see what was responsible for the growl. The sound of footsteps came from the direction that the ladies had just come from. Who could be following them? The footsteps were heavy, like they were coming from a very large man. The girls froze from fear and anticipation. With each step, Caitlin's pulse increased just a little. Stacia unsheathed her 8-inch hunting knife, then nodded to Caitlin, who pulled out her hand axe from the belt, then removed the blade cover. Stacia was ready to fight. Caitlin would do anything to protect her friend, which made her also ready to fight. He continued towards them, with no intention of hiding his position. He either didn't know exactly where the ladies were, or he didn't consider them a threat.
Look, I have a knife, and I'm not afraid to bury it in your face,
Stacia threatened. The footsteps stopped. Both girls forgot about whatever had been growling at them from the tree line. It didn't matter whatever it was. It had already darted off into the woods. It seemed like a long time before anything happened. The footsteps resumed, and the girls' hearts continued to pound. I have no desire to harm you. Of course it was a male voice. He sounded powerful, handsome, and also surprisingly intelligent. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I'm here to protect you. I really don't think the two of you realize where you are and what you've gotten yourself into. The footsteps stopped just on the other side of the bend the girls recently rounded. He remained out of sight. If you lower your weapons, I can get the two of you out of here safely. You've come to one of the most dangerous places in all the worlds.
How about this, asshole?
Stacia's threats were much bigger than the actual girl.
You get the fuck out of here, and you can go on living.
I will not force my companionship on you, the voice said calmly, but I strongly suggest that you go no further alone. There are dangers in these woods that are extremely dangerous. The man paused to let that sink in. There are some dangerous creatures in these woods, he repeated, but it had little effect this time either. But I promise you, I'm not one of those. I need to get you out of here. Caitlin looked at Stacia. Both girls were worried.
Get out of here,
Caitlin ordered.
We don't need your help, you fucking hooligan. You fucking loser.
The man around the corner laughed hard. You are in the middle of the Echo Forest, armed with a knife and a small axe. The voice did sound concerned. You may not know this, but the two of you are in desperate need of help. There are things here that are more hideous than the most hideous thing that's haunted your worst nightmares. My name is Slevin. Please let me help you. The copycats already know you are here.
Thanks.
Stacia snapped, even though the man did sound sincere.
We don't believe in copycats. Just go on your way and we'll go ours. We don't need your help. Nobody needs to get hurt.
Nothing happened.
Please just go.
Stacia thought she figured it out. The man must have figured out the location of the treasure and was trying to scare the girls away. It wouldn't work. Still, nothing happened. I don't know that I can do that. Do you realize what will happen when they catch you? And they will catch you. They have 100% success rate hunting. They always get their prey. The voice paused again. Caitlin thought he was giving them a chance to let his information sink in. Are you absolutely positive that you want me to leave? I promise you that you are not safe. Caitlin mouthed the word. Copycats? Stacia shrugged, but only looked mildly concerned.
We don't trust you, dickhead,
Stacia said. Caitlin was grateful that Stacia was doing all the talking.
Just get the hell out of here.
All right, the voice said, but you are making the worst mistake in your now short lives. The footsteps walked away and were just as heavy as when they approached. Both ladies breathed out heavily in complete relief that whoever it was left. Now the two had another problem. It was too late to get back to the car, and now they had what sounded like a large man stalking them. Maybe they really hadn't thought things through.
Should we go back to the car?
Caitlin asked. She was clearly shaken, but not completely convinced she was ready to leave. Caitlin also thought the man could be a fellow treasure hunter, but there had been the growl also.
It's up to you.
Stacia answered.
He did leave with no problems when we asked him to. He didn't try to sneak up on us and didn't try to force us to travel with him.
Do you really think there's copycats?
Stacia had done a bunch of research since she figured out the last clue.
Do you think they're real?
Stacia immediately responded.
No, they're myths for sure. I think he's just trying to scare us away so he can get the treasure. But I'll leave it up to you. Should we leave and come back in the morning?
Caitlin thought about it. She could see on Stacia's face that her friend wanted to continue on this adventure. Caitlin decided Stacia was right. The man was most likely trying to scare them. If they went back to the car, their treasure would be gone well before morning came. He also made no threats, nor had he forced them to let him stay. As a matter of fact, he was the opposite. The man had been calm and helpful. Caitlin understood why Stacia wanted to keep going. For people working 40-hour-a-week jobs, $25,000 would be life-changing. It's nowhere near enough to retire on, but Caitlin would be able to pay off most of her bills. Watch out for the scavengers and copycats. The man's voice was distant but clear. They'll both get you and make your life a living hell. That made Caitlin's heart do a loop-de-loop and gasp to herself.
Do you think we should stay?
Caitlin couldn't decide if she was too scared to stay or too scared of losing the money.
There hasn't been a reported copycat sighting in well over 100 years.
Stacia always liked to know everything about where she was going.
It's just the same as Bigfoot or the Rake. It's just stories passed down through the generations. For some reason, some of the stories just stick around for centuries. I don't believe in copycats. I truly believe he was just trying to scare us away for the treasure.
Caitlin was not nearly as confident as Stacia, but she did trust Stacia with every bit of her heart and soul. Caitlin agreed to proceed, but would do so with extreme caution. The light would be gone in 30 minutes, and the hollow was only 20 minutes further, according to Stacia's calculations. Of course, Stacia was right. Caitlin silently kept track. The walk took 19 minutes and 32 seconds. They set up their hammocks. The temperature in the forest was perfect for a restful night under the stars. Caitlin was sitting in the chair, snacking on some popcorn and drinking bottled water. Stacia wandered off in the woods to look for animal bones, antlers, or even cool rocks she could use for her crafts. But after April Fool's, Caitlin knew that Stacia could use those things with a much more powerful purpose. Stacia spoke quietly from just inside the tree line. Caitlin's main concern, as her friend's voice was coming from the opposite side of the clearing where Stacia entered the woods. She guessed Stacia had been gone long enough to circle around behind Caitlin. Caitlin was very nervous as she picked up her electric lantern and walked toward Stacia's voice. She walked slowly. Things didn't feel right. She looked like an old-timey miner walking into the darkness of a deep mine. The woods were dark and ominous. Not to mention, Stacia had said nothing else.
Stacia,
Caitlin called softly.
where are you?
Caitlin was squinting hard to try to see Stacia's shape. Caitlin really had no desire to go into the woods.
I'm over here.
Stacia called from behind Caitlin. Stacia sounded amused. Caitlin spun 180 with her eyes the size of dinner plates. Stacia also looked like an old-timey miner with her lantern before her.
Didn't you see me walk down this trail?
Stacia was wearing a smile, but it was a slightly confused smile.
Dude, are you okay?
Weird, bro.
Caitlin said. She was a little embarrassed for being so scared and didn't want Stacia to know.
I thought I heard something walking back there. It must have been an animal.
The two enjoyed stargazing, chatting, and munching on snacks until midnight. Thankfully, the strange man hadn't come back. The plan was to stay the night under the stars, then locate the treasure in the morning. Hopefully that asshole would stay away. So far so good, but who was to say he wouldn't show up in the middle of the night? Caitlin knew that she and Stacia would have dispatched the man with little effort. This deep in the forest, hiding the body wouldn't be hard either. But this trip was supposed to be relaxing. Other than the man and Stacia's mimic voice, this trip had been extremely relaxing.
You ready to get some sleep?
Stacia asked, stood up, then walked to her hammock. Caitlin was ready for bed also. Caitlin also went to her bed for the night. Then they both clicked off their electric lanterns.
Tomorrow we find a treasure.
Caitlin knew that it was not just the money for Stacia. Her friend would be so proud if she was able to solve the riddle. Caitlin had butterflies in her stomach. She was 50% excited for the money and 50% excited that Stacia brought her here. Even if they didn't find the treasure, this would still be a fun trip.
Do you really think it's here?
I really do.
That launched a fresh flutter of 1,000 butterflies in both girls' stomachs.
I've spent so much time researching, I'm like 95% sure we're going to find it tomorrow.
Caitlin covered her mouth to stifle a yawn. They told each other good night, despite neither of the women expecting to sleep. Surprisingly, both girls fell into a deep sleep quickly. Not long after the two drifted to dreamland under the full moon, Caitlin began to hear noises. She tried to ignore them. It was just an animal. Nothing she should worry about. She fought to stay in dreamland, but lost the battle quickly. Something was walking towards their camp from the same direction Stacia's copycat voice had come from. Caitlin was far from an outdoors expert, but she could tell whatever was out there walked on two legs. She couldn't believe that loser came back, Caitlin looked to Stacia's bed. Because of the bright moonlight, she could see that Stacia was not in her hammock. She must have needed to use the restroom. Caitlin let herself drift back into a light sleep until her friend came back. A branch broke close from the opposite side of the clearing, which made Caitlin nervous. That man could be anywhere. He could have watched the camp until Stacia woke up and walked into the woods, then pounce on Caitlin while Stacia was gone. Another broke in a completely different direction. Then another. Then another. That was 5 different directions. What the hell was going on here? A voice whispered from the trail to the left, in the direction of the last breaking branch.
Caitlin, over here. You gotta get the hell out of here.
Somehow, it didn't sound exactly like Stacia, but Caitlin only realized that in the deepest part of her mind. Then another Stacia laughed from the direction of the 3rd branch break. Caitlin could hear her pulse in her ear and felt it pounding in her neck. Her mind couldn't wrap itself around what was happening. Stacia seemed to be coming from everywhere all at once. Suddenly, the forest came to life. The trees shook like they were being shaken by a powerful earthquake. Every bird in the forest took flight all at once. Caitlin scanned her surroundings. She needed to find a way out of here. She had to figure out where Stacia was as well. The trees were not shaking around the trail exiting the clearing to the southeast. Caitlin decided that was her best chance to get away. Then she would be able to find Stacia. Caitlin rolled awkwardly out of her hammock, then stood up after falling to the ground like a panda. It was only seconds before Caitlin was on the trail and heading deeper into the woods. She hoped she was hidden in all the trees from whatever was out there. The sound of Stacia's running filled the night air. Still, Caitlin couldn't see anything. Caitlin dug behind a bush and closed her eyes tight. She was breathing hard, and her heart was pounding despite her using every ounce of her will to calm down. Everything stopped, and the Stacias began to whisper from everywhere. Her friend whispered. Caitlin could now tell for sure the voice was not the real Stacia. Caitlin pushed her hands against her ears and somehow closed her eyes even tighter. Her eyes burned from the effort of fighting back tears. Caitlin continued to try to slow her heart and breathing. Maybe this was a dream. It had to be a dream. Caitlin tried to force herself to wake up with 0 success. She pinched her arm, then slapped her cheek. Still nothing was working. She would keep trying. Caitlin opened her eyes to look directly into the face of a terrifying Stacia. They were mere inches apart. Caitlin wanted to scream and run, but how could she be scared of such a good friend? They had spent a lot of time together in the last several months. The irish of Stacia's eyes were nearly white and glowed with a slight blue tint. Her hair was as black as ink. That blackness leaked from her hair and covered Stacia's forehead down, then surrounded her eyes. It was like her best friend was wearing a mask over the top of her face. Stacia whispered into Caitlin's face. Caitlin jumped up and took off deeper into the woods. Stacia's laugh chased after her. Caitlin could hear things running through the woods on all sides of her, and one weird Stacia on the trail behind her. They must be extremely agile and be able to see very well in the darkness to move that fast through a thickish forest. Luckily the trail was wide, yet it was still uneven, so Caitlin wasn't able to run as fast as she would like. Caitlin stumbled a couple of times, but luckily kept her feet. The trail forked. Caitlin's heart sank when she saw another Stacia down the left fork. This one had an orange forehead, with black covering most of her eyebrows and down between her nose. Her eyes glowed with the same whitish blue. Caitlin took off as fast as she could down the right branch. Caitlin ran until her lungs burned, with the things keeping pace with her every step of the way. She was beginning to think this was it for her. She would die never knowing what happened to Stacia, why there was at least 2 copycats of her friend. She stumbled clumsily into a clearing. She had to find a place to hide. There was nothing in this clearing, not a bush or even a large rock. Her eyes landed on the only other trailhead in the clearing. Stacia lay there and appeared to be unconscious. She looked closer, and this was not just a trailhead. It was an entrance to somewhere, judging by the beautifully decorated archway. Caitlin wondered where it went briefly, then ran across the clearing to her friend. She could tell that this was for sure the real Stacia. Those things must be the copycats the strange man was talking about. Caitlin wished he was here now.
Stacia!
Caitlin's voice was soft, but covered in urgency. She shook Stacia softly. Her friend stirred weakly.
Stacia, wake up! We gotta get out of here.
Her eyes fluttered. In the full moonlight, Caitlin could tell they were really Stacia's eyes.
Stacia, please get up.
The Stacia with the black forehead stepped into the clearing from the trail Caitlin used only moments before. The orange-faced Stacia stepped in the clearing from the woods to the left. Caitlin shook Stacia harder. They approached slowly, still in the shadows of the forest. 3 more entered, 2 from the right and 1 to the left. The one to the left had a partially black, partially goth white face highlighted in gold. The one closest to Stacia on the right had eyes surrounded with red and black. The last had ashy white skin with tannish and black highlights. Caitlin looked at the sign on the archway. It read, Old Jericho. What the hell was that? The Stacias were closing in slowly. The original Stacia with the black forehead stepped out of the shadows into the moonlight. The thing changed instantly. It grew 2 feet, and its face changed into the face of a decaying German shepherd with deer antlers. The thing's body was also decomposing. Caitlin could see the trail behind it through the beast's ribs. The thing had to be at least 7 feet tall. Caitlin was crying and shaking Stacia wildly and begged her friend to wake up. The orange Stacia stepped into the moonlight and sent through a similar transformation. The beasts weren't identical, but they were very indistinguishable. Caitlin was shaking Stacia hard now.
Stacia, get up!
Caitlin begged.
Stacia, they're coming!
Stacia opened her eyes and tried weakly to get to her feet.
Stacia, please get up!
Stacia mumbled something. The other 3 were no longer Stacias. Caitlin was looking at 5 monsters in the moonlight. Caitlin grabbed Stacia by the arm and pulled her hard. Stacia was able to get to her knees. The beasts approached slowly with snarling smiles on their decomposing mouths. The things were no more than 10 feet from the girls. Caitlin could smell the stink of them. The front beast, the Stacia with the black around her eyes, was drooling a thick ooze down the front of its skinny chest. She screamed loud when a hand touched her softly on the shoulder. Before she had a chance to think, she swung as hard as she could. Her hand connected hard with the stone-like abs of a giant man dressed like a Viking. The handsome blond man had no reaction. He may not even have felt the punch. He said nothing. The beast stopped, and the lead one screamed like a banshee. He firmly but gently moved Caitlin towards the trail to Old Jericho. She fought up first, but could not have stopped him even if she fought as hard as she could. He picked up Stacia as easily as a father picks up his infant, then tossed her over his shoulder. He shoved Caitlin under the archway, this time not near as gentle. The air changed the second they stepped through. It was like the air was thick like water. The forest now looked like looking underwater with goggles on. It was wavy and shimmering. She looked back, and the Viking was right behind her with Stacia on his shoulder. That convinced her the man was here to help. Thankfully, there were no more snarling beasts. Caitlin ran for a good minute before the trail opened up to a large clearing. Off in the distance, Caitlin could see the outline of a Wild West ghost town. She felt like she was in a different world. The guy set Stacia down on her feet. Luckily, she was strong enough to stand.
Where are we?
Caitlin asked.
Why was everything blurry in that tunnel? Who are you? Where are we?
Don't fret, young lady. The man was trying to be as comforting as possible. It was obvious he was urgent to get out of here. You are in the world next door to your own. This country is called Jericho, but more important is that town. They will take you in and help you get settled. They are good people. Caitlin saw the silhouette of a small woman walking towards them. She must have known they were coming, judging by how close she was.
Who are you?
Caitlin asked. My name is Slevin, he answered. That is Lois, and she will take you to Elwood. Then he was gone, back down the tunnel between worlds. Thanks for coming on a ride with Lost Souls. Please come back next week for another drive and another story. And remember, all lost souls are welcome here.